Hello and welcome to Dig It. I'm Peter Brown and hosting the show with me today is Chris Day. Hi Chris.
Hi Peter. It's the summer season and what a year it's been. Despite the weather, roses are delivered beautifully to continue their amazing displays and scents over the coming months. And it's been a roller coaster ride for other areas of the garden. In this edition of Dig It, we chat with garden and plants influencer Dave the Plantman on his passion for roses and how his amazing gardening advice over social media has become quite a stir. Dave the Plantman, welcome, a very warm welcome today to Dig It. And where do we find you?
Good morning. I'm here in sunny Wigan. I have a little home office, so I'm sat in my home office looking at the sun beaming throughout from outside. So it's a beautiful day here in Wigan.
Lovely, yes, and long may it continue. It's been a funny old summer, hasn't it? So
I think summer's finally arrived down south, and by the sound of it, it's made it up north as well. That's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we've had the coldest, wettest, driest, hottest. We're going to get everything this year, which is what we get every year in gardening. We're used to it.
Yeah, exactly. So, Dave the Plantman, you've been in the gardening business for a while. Where did it all begin for you then? What was the spark?
Right, well, I've been in the gardening industry now for over 45 years, which makes me sound very, very old. I didn't know, because in the 70s we didn't have this, people weren't dyslexic, but I didn't realise that I was dyslexic until very late in life. So I just didn't think that I was definitely not an academic. So I started, when I left school, I went and got a job in a garden centre. Mm-hmm. I then worked my way through the garden centre, through day release, and then I ended up going to college full time. And then when I got to college and we were doing a subject that I was interested in and I was good at, and it wasn't all about reading, writing and spelling, instead of I was like top of the class. I couldn't believe it. And all these people who'd come from posh schools and had A-levels and everything, I was knocking them out the park because I got horticulture for some strange reason. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe that was because my mother and my granddad were farming, gardening background, maybe. It could be that there used to be a saying that my mum could put a root on a churl egg. She could root anything.
Now, that's interesting.
That's brilliant. And other than presumably taking cuttings then with your mother, have you got any other memories of your childhood and sort of the first plants you grew and the first things that you had successes with in the garden?
Yeah, well, as soon as when I was a schoolboy, I actually built my own greenhouse out of scrap wood and polythene, and we built a greenhouse, put tomato plants and cucumbers. Okay. And I've never grown better cucumbers and tomato plants since. It was just a knocked together polythene and old scrap wood greenhouse. It worked really, really well. So it just shows you don't need all the mod cons to grow stuff.
Indeed. Yeah, that's actually true. So, Dave, I think we do share our seat in learning. So you attended Mysco College up in Preston?
I did.
Yeah. How did you find those years?
Oh, I loved them. As I said to you before, I've gone from not being an academic to suddenly becoming really good at everything I did in the horticulture. I thrived in that environment, and I just really enjoyed it. I have got a funny story about it, though. I mean, I don't know if you went there before or after me, but after I'd been there was a warning that we once had two students who ate a plant, don't eat anything. And I've still never learned. I still eat all kinds of things. But we had a greenhouse which had some plants in there, and anything that had a red label meant that they were a crop, maybe an edible crop, but they were a crop from some part of or a staple food from some part of the world. And there was coffee beans and all kinds of things in there. And there was a plant called a toro plant, which was related to a Dieffenbachia.
Ooh, right.
And the head of horticulture had just cut one down because it grows in shoots from the base, and he cut the main shoot out to let the little ones grow. And we found it, and we cut a piece off, and it looked like potato. We peeled it and put it in our mouths, and within seconds, we realised we made a mistake. And this Dieffenbachia type thing is called dumb cane because it makes your head go numb.
Not good for students. Not good for anybody. Oh dear.
So we were eating dry bread and we were washing our mouths out, and
A life
I
lesson.
never learned. I still eat lots of weird stuff. I have to try things. It's just the way I am. But now there's a warning to any student who goes to college: don't eat anything unless you know what it is, because you could end up with like these two students that we had in 1980.
Okay.
And the other thing was I found out about this plant. Apparently, it's a South American plant that they beat to death in a mortar and pestle.
Mm-hmm.
They then pour the fluid from this plant into the river, and it stuns all the fish, and all the fish float to the top, and they pick all the fish off. So it's that poisonous sort of thing. And then eventually they do eat it, but it's like once they've boiled it, sieved it, and then eventually it is like a curry. But we ate it raw.
Wow, from my memory, isn't that the one that makes your tongue swell up?
Yeah, they call it. I think the houseplant one, the Dieffenbachia. When you were taking cuttings of it, if you happen to put your fingers in your mouth, your tongue, like you say, your tongue went numb. But all the side of my face went numb. I lost all the feeling in all one side of my face.
Lesson learned. Lesson learned.
Yeah.
I was talking like to the dentist.
Good stuff. So David, our paths also met when you were working at Barton Grange Nurseries.
That's right. When I left college, I got a job right at the bottom at Barton Grange Nurseries. They used to like to say that I was a tractor driver, so I was doing the plant selecting, picking up for the guy who did the selecting, and then I worked from there, and I ended up after working my way to sales and marketing manager, and I was there for 27 years. So I've had one career as a sales and marketing manager of a wholesale nursery, supplying garden centres throughout the UK.
Excellent. Yes,
That's one part of my career.
Indeed, yeah. And so, what happened after that then, Dave? Did you continue in the gardening trade there, or did you move on to different aspects?
Yes, well, I mean, the good thing about horticulture, you wouldn't have realised from a council, a sort of a comprehensive school in Lancashire, that I would end up travelling the world with horticulture. I mean, I was all around Italy buying. I've been at just about every single country in Europe: Poland, Denmark, France, Holland, Germany, Belgium, you name it. I think I've been. Spain, buying. Mm-hmm. So I used to go all over Europe buying. So that was that's obviously it gave me a massive background in ornamental horticulture. I wouldn't class myself as a veg grower, but I'm definitely know a little bit about ornamental horticulture, and a little bit of knowledge has rubbed off over the years.
Of course.
Excellent. And can you remember any trips where you saw any really unusual plants that you'd not come across before and sort of brought them into the country, or is there any major highlights like that you can think of?
Well, I like some of the weird stuff that nature has invented, and you think, how the heck did it do that? And one of them actually was in Kew Gardens. I actually saw it for real. And it was a bush that had great big thorns that looked like a cow's horn, like a pair of cow's horns on this bush. Mm-hmm. And it had a little tiny hole in it. And in this hole, there was an ant that lived. And this ant used to go and collect bits of leaves, take it back into this horn, which was hollow, and it used to live in there. And I'm not sure, but I think it grew fungus. And then it ate the fungus that it grew on the leaves, but inside these little horns there was some roots. So the tree was actually getting nutrients. And you think, how did that happen?
Yeah.
That sounds a really interesting symbiotic relationship there with a plant and a ant. That's brilliant, isn't it? It's a bit like mistletoe, isn't it? But the other way around. Interesting.
Yeah, well, it's like a lot of like carnivorous plants. I mean, they only catch flies to get the nutrients out the fly because the ground that they're growing in is completely devoid of any kind of nutrients. So the only way they can get nutrients is by catching flies. And you think, hang on a minute, a plant has outsmarted an insect.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never thought of that before.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. It's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So David, all your travels and all your experience in the gardening trade, how do you think it's changed over the years? Has it changed for the better, worse? What's your current thinking?
I'd say it changed for the worst. I mean, if I go back to in the 80s, I mean, the number of UK nurseries in the country was hundreds and hundreds. Mm-hmm. The amount of individual garden centres that were out there were thousands. And it was such a diverse. And I remember talking to somebody, and they used to spend every weekend driving around all the garden centres because there was something different in every garden centre. Now, a lot of the bigger groups and the bigger growers, it's gone very, very monocultured in a way that you go to a garden centre, and then what used to be an independent garden centre is now a group. So you go to the next one, it's got the same plants in. It's the same garden centre. So it's the groups, I think, coming into the industry, I don't think have really done the industry any good. And the fact that the growers, a lot of them have gone very monoculture, where they're just growing one product. And then when you go into a garden centre at Christmas, you've got skim ears on every garden centre, and they're all from the same grower in Holland. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Negative.
Yeah, but I think when you look at what the RHS is promoting to the gardening trade, diversity, that means we need to be growing more different things. Whether it's natives or non-natives. So I think you're right there. That needs to change. That has to be a game changer, especially global warming and climate change, perhaps in the future.
Yeah. I know on my reels, I do a lot about trying to get an haven for wild flowers. I don't like using the word weed, but people don't understand that a weed is actually a wild flower. And the definition of weed is any plant growing in the wrong location. So I always say, if you get a potato plant growing in a wheat field, it's a weed.
Yeah, definitely.
Place. Now, if you like that dandelion growing in your garden, I know the bees will be happy for you to leave it growing in your garden. And I'm pushing to get people who've got quite a big lawns to leave a bit more lawn as a rough area, cut footpaths through it with a lawnmower so you can still access the whole garden, and maybe cut a bit for, if you've got a big enough garden, cut a bit for the kids to play on, but leave a few more rough areas to get a few more wild plants back into the garden. I found out a statistic the other week that we've lost, since 1930, 97% of British meadows have gone.
Yeah.
So that's what all the insects lived on. And when I used to drive my car in the 70s, I used to get splattered with flies and bugs, and it was completely coated in insects.
Absolutely.
I've been to London and back this week, not a fly on it, hardly. Where's they gone? Where's the insects gone?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. People have been saying in the last few weeks about butterflies. You've seen the few cabbage white, but it's only when the temperatures have moved up in the last probably fortnight, 3 weeks, that we're actually seeing more butterflies in our gardens. So I mean, it must be all weather related, and obviously if we haven't got the diversity of plants in our gardens, perhaps that's another reason why we're losing so many of these species.
Well, that was a scary thing that I did a post on a couple of weeks ago, and I did a video of my buddleia. And my buddleia is normally in July smothered in butterflies, and about 6 or 7 different varieties. It's covered in butterflies. This year, my buddleia has flowered and gone without seeing a butterfly. It's got a few flowers left on it still, late ones, but it's never seen a butterfly this year. Now, I put the post on and said, I'm getting worried. There's no butterflies this year. And what worried me even more after that is that somebody said from Denmark, Belgium, Holland, Germany, France, South Ireland, even in America, people who are following me have come on and said, "Same here." Scary.
Gosh.
So it's not just a sort of Northern European thing; it's a worldwide thing. You think you're feeling?
It seems to be. Yeah, I mean, if you look at that post on my social media, the amount of comments I've got from all over the world, well, the Northern Hemisphere, all saying the same thing. It's quite scary, really. You think we need to be doing more. We need to get. I keep telling people, you've not got weeds in your garden, you've not got a rough patch in your garden. It's your wildflower meadow.
That's what I say. We're chatting about brambles or blackberries, as Chris and I like to call them. Not brambles, they're blackberries. Yeah. And I love a good blackberry, but essentially for some people they're a menace and a nuisance. And I mean, they grow so well, but the fruit on them is lovely. So I always look at them as a good plant, whereas I think some people don't see them as such. But yeah, that's certainly the case. But
I'm torn. I get asked loads of questions about how to get rid of these wildflowers, and I'm torn between getting rid of them, advising people how to get rid of them, and advising people how to keep them. But blackberries, I mean, you can grow a blackberry on a fence, and you can't get it. I went into a walled garden and found a thornless blackberry a couple of weeks ago, and did a video. And I said, "Look at this blackberry on this wall." It was a walled garden, obviously in a stately home, but it was amazing. It had berries from top to bottom. It's one of the nicest looking plants I'd seen in a garden for years, and it was a blackberry.
Excellent. Good stuff. Now, going back to your thoughts on our industry and the fact that we are getting a lot of generic, bland sort of garden centres pushing out the same old stuff, do you not think there's actually a benefit on the flip side of that, which is the fact that the little nurseries that are actually possibly even growing their own stuff now will be able to start getting back into the market, and because of their unique range of, say, alpines or whatever it is that they're growing, that there's going to be more spaces for places like that?
Oh, yes, definitely. And I know a lot of if you go to the flower shows like Hampton Court and Tatton, and I've been to them all this year, and a lot of the specialist weird and wonderful wacky growers are going to those places and educating, and the garden centre and the public are going looking there. But I think more garden centres, they need to buddy up with some of these little growers and get something different in there. Unique.
Well, definitely. And I think, you're totally right that the big conglomerate sort of corporate associations, they're good in a way because they keep the prices keen and they make us all work hard, but they do sometimes have this one-size-fits-all culture. And I totally agree. It's not great for the diversity of the plants that we can buy. But anyway, that's my rant for the day.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. If it's not commercially viable, people don't grow it. And I think the public also have gone very. They're only looking for a polished specimen of a skimia that's got so many flowers on, and it looks absolutely immaculate. And if you got a rough and ready thing in there, it wouldn't sell. It would just look like something for the rubbish bin. But it could be something that's very, very unusual and different. And I think the public have got to realise that when we've got these things, that if they're looking for something different, they should help us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good advice there, Dave. Can we just go over to roses now? And you've been in the sort of rose business, or certainly working with Harkness roses over the years. How has that made your view of roses as far as the gardener's concerned?
Yeah, well, roses, when I left the Barton Grange nursery and I wanted, after 27 years, I wanted a complete change, and I went working in the rose industry, which has been a very up and down journey. From 27 years in one place, I must have had about 15 different jobs since I left. So it's made life very interesting. But again, it's given me more education on on everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now doing things like Chelsea Flower Show, Hampton Court Flower Show, and doing a lot of, advice. I get asked to go down to talk to people about roses.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that's changed about roses, I think especially at Harkness, is that a lot of the roses that they're doing now are for presents, which is really took off. So you can basically buy a rose now for every occasion. And I think compared to a bunch of flowers, a rose plant is 100 times better value. I'm sure anybody even people who don't know how to look after a rose, I got one for a lady. I got one called Sheila's Perfume for a lady called Sheila, who I know. And she's never grown a plant in her life. And I told her what to do with it. And I did a video on it. And she goes out every morning now with a little watering can and she waters her little Sheila's Perfume. And she's had so much pleasure from that plant. And I can't believe it. From somebody who hates gardening, not interested in gardening, never grown a plant in her life, to getting so much pleasure from one plant. And it's still going. It's 2 years now she's had it. And it's still flowering and doing its thing for her. So she loves it.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's a great achievement. I totally think the same with orchid. Like when you give someone an orchid, even though probably 50 to 80% of them don't live that long, they still last a good couple of months, and they give whoever you've given the orchid to a much better sort of floral display than just a bunch of flowers that last a week and then go in the rubbish bin, don't they?
Well, I've got another interesting story. I live in a village called Standish, which is near Wigan.
Yep.
And there is a taxus, a golden upright Irish yew, the Fastigiata type. It's called Taxus fastigiata standishi. And a Dutchman gave me one because he knew where I live. And I planted it, and it's been in the garden now for 30 years.
Mm.
And every time I walk past that plant, I think of that man. And I think, he gave me that. I got that from him. And you never, if you give a present as a plant to somebody and that plant survives and does well for that person, they'll never forget where they got it from and why they got it. And it's a gift that keeps on giving. I know that sounds like a cliche, but it does.
It does, yeah. And I think you're right. We get quite a number of customers who have been given maybe a tree, maybe for commemoration of a wedding or even an engagement, and then they move house, and they feel indebted that they need to buy the same variety because obviously they've got the label still, so they can take it and move it on with their journey. Obviously, they can't dig the tree up if it's been in there much more than a couple of years, but it's that connection, as you say, and I think it's really good. I think it's a very much spirited way of how people can get into gardening, in a very not obvious way, but obviously a beneficial way, I suppose.
Well, it's like I give a rose to a friend of mine for his 25th wedding anniversary, and every year he sends me a picture on his wedding anniversary of his rose. Still looking great,
lovely.
Yeah,
That's brilliant.
Yeah, yes.
Excellent. And
that's
with
good value for money.
They are good value for money, aren't they? And with regards to roses, Dave, are you a Rambler fan or are you a Standard fan? I mean, what's your favourite sort of rose?
I think it's got to be. I like climbers and I like hybrid teas. Sorry, not hybrid teas. Bush. We now call them modern bush roses.
Yeah.
We're trying to get rid of the word hybrid tea floribunda. I mean, the single head was what was classed as an hybrid tea, and a multi-head or cluster rose is what used to be called the floribunda. But my favourite rose is one called Chandos Beauty.
Okay.
And Chandos Beauty we take to Chelsea every year, and we put it on the corner of all our stands at Harkness. They put it on the corner of each stand. Mm-hmm. And I love standing there and watching people sort of walk into a wall of scent and then smell round, and then they float in almost like Bisto kids. You remember where they floated in on the scent of the gravy? They float in on the scent of the rose, and the ladies home in on the row.
Of course.
And they say, what scent? Where's it coming from? I said, it's this one here. It's called Chandos Beauty. I usually have one in my hand, and I say, would you like to have a smell of one? And the faces, I better watch what I'm saying, but they put the faces like ecstasy, and I go, I can do. best job in Chelsea, standing there, holding this rose and watching all these ladies go, oh my God, that's beautiful.
Well, there's the power of the rose, isn't it? In all its,
Yeah.
How do you think, rose breeding, obviously Hartness have been breeding roses for about 140 years now. They know how to do it rather well. What's your thoughts on the way rose breeding has gone over the years? We've got repeat flowering varieties of things now and different colours, but any thoughts on...
Philip Hartness is the last of the Hartnesses. He's the only one left of the Hartness family who's still in the industry. And Philip, Hartness have been going longer than any other grower. They are the oldest. I think they were at the first ever Chelsea Flower Show.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been going longer than any other rose breeder in the country. But Philip and his brother, they were more interested in breeding roses and selling roses, not particularly about marketing and spending millions on promoting the brand. So, and as time's got on and Philip's got older, he's got less bothered about promoting the brand and more interested in, he likes breeding roses. So
Right. Mm-hmm.
if he can afford to do that and that's what he likes doing, why wouldn't you?
Exactly.
But now what's happened is there's other people come into the business and they're trying to get the brand back up and get it, as a main brand in the industry again. Because some of the varieties go back, as you said, for years. But a lot of the new varieties that are coming out, what Philip's done is stop using any chemicals in the breeding program, so that if a plant gets any disease, basically what he does, he crosses two roses together. You can imagine a lovely dark red and a lovely scented. He crosses those together, and his aim is to get a scented dark red, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
He'll breed those together and get pinks and whites and all kinds of colours. And he will get from his breeding program about 40,000 seedlings every year. Now, out of those 40,000, a lot of them are rubbish. They don't make it. Some of them are really good, and then some of them get disease. Some of them are very prone to this, that, and the other. Some of them, the flowers aren't particularly decent. And then out of that, he keeps grading out. And then when they get to, after a few years, some of those grade outs get planted in the field, they get evaluated, and then eventually there's probably about 3 or 4 a year maybe that are fit to take to the market. But they will be disease resistant, repeat flowering, and they will have something different about them to what's on the market at the moment.
Mm. It's a big old process. What sort of number of years, Dave, for that? How long from that initial cross to getting it into the garden centres and nurseries?
It's probably, the seeds are evaluated. The seed as a seedling, it takes. You do the crossbreeding, say today, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
You will collect the seeds this autumn. You will then stratify those stats, put them in a cold store over winter for a few weeks over winter. Then they get planted in January. Then those seedlings grow all next year. And then from those, some of those will get graded out and probably potted on. And then for another year, they'll evaluate them. And then another year in the field. And then probably another year until they can bulk it up. So you're probably going on about 5 years, I'd say, from breeding to market to get the numbers up. Because once you decide you've got a variety that's worth going with, then you start to bulk it up by get the buds off the stock you've got and putting them onto the root stocks and start putting them in the field and growing volume of them, and then launch them usually at Chelsea.
Wow, it's a very involved process. Then it's not just as simple as cross a couple of roses and off you go. You got a lovely new one then. And do you think that sort of climate change has had much of an impact on the types of varieties that are coming through as stronger varieties now, and obviously older certain varieties we're not seeing so much anymore that are being sort of taken out of production? Do you think that climate change has had much of an influence on the rose industry?
Do you know what it is? It's not just climate change. It's actually pollution. Roses, the old roses that were around, and I get asked for them all the time. Have you got this? Have you got the other? My grandma used to grow this. It was really scented. It did really well. Blah blah blah. During the war, for instance.
Yeah.
Well, in the 40s, 50s, and probably 60s, there was so much pollution because everybody had coal fires, the steam engines. Everybody had wood. They were burning coal constantly, and that's what smogs. The famous London smogs that used to happen. And then the rain used to come down and it would collect the sulphur out the coal smoke and give the lovely roses a lovely sulphur wash every time it rained. So now we've cleaned up the atmosphere. They're not getting that sulphur wash every time it rains. So a lot of the old roses cannot survive in this clean atmosphere.
They're not getting the
Black spot.
Yeah, well, sulphur's was a good treatment for all sorts of fungal diseases, wasn't it? Obviously not so popular now, but that's really interesting. Wow.
But that's what it is. Some of the old varieties cannot stand clean air. They need the woods. It's the coal smoke that had the sulphur in it, and that was giving them a sulphur wash. And that's what's changed. Yeah. Now, a lot of the varieties that have been bred in England by Harkness are suitable for the British climate. There are other varieties of say, French and say, Spanish breeders, but you find that they don't tend to do well in England. They don't like the cold, or not England, Britain, or the northern, our band where we live. They don't like the cold and the wet, and they can't stand it. So you've got to find roses that suit the climate where you live. Really, they do vary such a bit. The one thing about roses, they like to have. Again, everybody is shocked when I say this. They like a nice heavy clay. They don't like sitting in water, but they never like to be dry at the roots. And they love to be in full sun. So they are a bit of a weird one, that the full sun and a good heavy clay is perfect for roses and potatoes.
Yes.
Excellent. No, that's probably why they do so well around here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, most definitely. That's why they do in the garden. Dave, on the side, we've mentioned just disease there, but pests. What? Any thoughts on keeping our roses cleaner? I suppose these days we shouldn't be promoting insecticides and things, being as green and as natural as possible. But is there any sort of tips on keeping?
Yeah, all my recommendations now I try and keep as green as possible. One of my favourite ones is to get a couple of garlics, boil them up, put a garlic into, make an infusion, put that infusion into a squitty bottle, and you can leave it in the garden. It can go rancid and smelly as possible. And then every time you see the buds come in, spray the buds with a layer of garlic spray, and the smell puts off the insects. They don't. You never see a garlic with a green fly, and obviously they don't like it. So all the herbs that we grow have all developed these strong, pungent odours that we love to eat. They've all been designed by nature to stop plants, snails, slugs and snails eating garlic. You can use this on your hostas as well. So basically, look at nature and say, well, let's use garlic spray to keep things off our roses, and that works. And it also works on a lot of other things that get eaten by. The only trouble is with garlic spray, it does get washed off onto the soil, and you do have to reapply it when next time it stops raining, which hasn't been hard this spring.
Continuous job, I should imagine.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah.
It's free, it's cheap, it's easy to make, and it's totally environmentally friendly, so you can't do any harm. All you do is you send your stream flying to next door.
And they will be very happy about that. and keeping your roses healthy, nutritionally wise, Dave. I mean, obviously there's a whole gamut of feeds that you can buy off the shelf now. But from your experience and talking to your social media friends out there, any sort of thoughts on best feeds?
Well, I always say tomato food, because you can pick it up anywhere, and give them a liquid feed of tomato feed every time you water them. Just mix some tomato food. cheap and cheerful. But if you look on the packet, it says it's for fruit and flowers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got the same ingredients in it for tomatoes as the same as a rose would need. So tomato food's the simplest. You just get a capful, put it in a watering can, and give it some every time you feel like it. Probably about every 10 days, really.
Yep.
Chicken poo's quite good because that's another organic fertilizer. And you did say farmyard manure. If you can get it, then that's good as well. It's all good. Again, it's about keeping with farmyard manure and mulches. It's a good thing to keep the roots cool on a rose. So a good thick layer of mulch underneath the rose won't do it any harm at all because it keeps those roots damp and cool and not drying out. And obviously, once the worms get into the organic material, they'll take it all down, and all the nutrients of a mulch or anything. It could be wood bark, it could be anything, just to keep that layer of mulch above the soil that the worms and everything will take down and feed the plant eventually. Sometimes you have to give them a little bit of extra feed when you put a raw mulch on, because you get a thing where the bacteria takes all the nutrients out of the soil to eat the wood, and then it gives it back when it's finished. But you might need to give a little bit of feed at the same time as you mulch to just give that rose a boost.
And have you tried any of the borage teas or sort of compost juice or any of those type of fertilizers on your roses?
I have got some. To be honest, I haven't really tried it. Everybody swears by something called Uncle Tom's Rose Tonic, which I have done a few trials with. And if you look on the packet, it's a fairly innocuous, if that's the right word, chemical. It's not really a bad chemical. It's something that the plant produces itself anyway, and it basically beefs up the rose. And I've spoke to a lot of rose growers about it, and it's what is it? I can't remember the active ingredient. It's gone out of my head. It'll come back to me. Something nitrite, and what it does, it basically beefs the roots up, beefs the plants up, makes the plants greener, stronger, and you can foliar feed it with that, and you can actually liquid feed it with it in a watering can. Okay. And it's called the Uncle Tom's Rose Tonic, which is a little company I think it's down in Worcester somewhere. To do it, it's all over the internet. You can buy it, or I don't know if you can get it in garden centres yet, but yeah, I keep telling him he should be getting it in garden centres.
Yeah. Excellent. We'll have to go and look for Uncle Tom then.
And as we're in the lovely month of August, new rose varieties. Obviously, the Rose of the Year was announced a few weeks ago at Hampton Court Flower Show. Any varieties we should be looking out for next year from Harkness?
Well, it's top secret. I'm not allowed to. I've sworn to secrecy.
Okay.
Chelsea Flower Show do not like any news getting out about any new varieties. It's got to be if it's going to be launched at Chelsea. So, unfortunately, we've got to keep stum. But there is some exciting new stuff coming through. Good. I know.
We'll look out for that.
Bated breath, then. Yeah. Okay.
And the charity one we did this year was the Chelsea Pensioner. Mm-hmm. And disappointingly, people think that Chelsea pensioners are all Londoners and they all live in Chelsea, which they do live in Chelsea. But Chelsea Hospital is just for ex-servicemen.
Of course.
And all these pensioners are from all over the country. They're from Scotland, Liverpool, you name it. I met a lot of the Chelsea pensioners, and they're just ex-servicemen. And what happens is with the Chelsea pensioners, if you're on a pension and you live on your own, you can apply to be a Chelsea pensioner, and you go into that hospital and they look after you, and I think you have to donate some of your pension to your upkeep, but it is a charity. Mm-hmm. And what we did, we came up with this new rose called the Chelsea Pensioner Rose, and there was a guy there called Patrick who has a rose garden in Chelsea Barracks, and we went in there and we gave him this rose, and he's a lovely man. and we met a lot of lovely pensioners. But as I said, there was from Liverpool, Northampton, I think Patrick's from the South Coast. None of them are actually from Chelsea. They just lived there. But the general public didn't realise that. They thought they were like the Queen's Guard or somebody elite. They're not. Everyday ex-servicemen, that's it. And women now.
Of course, yeah.
That's a good point, yeah.
Lovely. Now, here's an interesting fact. Dave the Plantman, I looked at your socials yesterday, and I see you, and we're talking here of something like 209,000 followers on Instagram, 83,000 on Facebook, TikTok, 65,000, and an awful lot on YouTube. And we did a quick calculation, didn't we, before we started recording, David? We thought that was about 360,000 followers. So please tell us your journey on this this social media. It is a journey, isn't it?
Well, it is. At 63, there's no way I thought I was ever going to be a garden influencer. But as I said, I've been in the industry for a long time, and I've been in the marketing side. And I've been dying to try and get my enthusiasm out there for plants, because once people do get bitten by the bug, they get so much pleasure from it, and it's giving me so much pleasure to spread my word. You know, I'm almost like an evangelist. If you see the light,
Praise
see the light
God.
and buy a plant. But no, and the feedback I'm getting off people who say, "Oh, I can't garden. I've never gardened, but with you holding my hand, I feel like I could have a go." And then they send me a picture of their hydrangea that's in full bloom, or a cutting that they've rooted. And I even had a young guy pop up. I was checking into a hotel. We went to the National Plant Show. I think I saw you there, didn't I?
I think you did. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. I went to the National Plant Show, and I was checking in a hotel in Kenilworth, which is in the middle of nowhere where this hotel was. And this big lad came out the undergrowth, and he said, "Are you Dave the Plantman?" And I went, "Yeah." He said, "I messaged you the other day," and he said, he told me his name, and he said, "I've been following you," and he said, "I'm a garden maintenance, set up my own garden maintenance company," and he said, the information I've been getting from you, it's been brilliant. So I'd like to shake your hands and say thank you very much for what you've been doing. I thought, oh, I was in tears. And that's what it all started by. My son said, "You've got that much knowledge in your head, Dad. Why don't you write a book?" And I said, "I'll never write a book. I'm not an academic." But I started advising people in the village of what to do, and I got known as Dave the Plantman. And then there was one day I couldn't explain in writing how to cut down a cordyline that had got frosted, because people were digging them up. And I said, "Don't dig them up, cut them down. They'll grow again from the roots. They've got a root like a carrot. They'll come back. Don't cut them down." Anyway, I couldn't stop people doing it. So I did a video, and this video got, I don't know how many 100,000 views, because everybody had the same problem. And my son said, "Oh, you could have touched on something here." So since then, I've been doing a video every day, and it's just gone mad, really. So I'm now. I went to Hampton Court walking around on my own on press day, thinking that nobody knew who I was, and I was shocked how many people knew who I was. I was like, so it taken me by surprise, to be quite honest.
Yeah, well, you're enjoying it. Well, that's the most important thing, and obviously people are enjoying the advice you're giving as well. So, how do you decide on what to discuss, Dave?
Well, I walk around it, and I never look up. I'm always looking at plants. It doesn't matter if I'm in the countryside, walking around the town, wherever I am. I'm always looking at plants, and if I see something that catches my eye, and I think, oh, my followers would like to know about that. I know an interesting fact about that, which is my catchphrase with the thumb. And that was only because we couldn't stop. We didn't know how to edit, so we used to just put. I used to say, when we finish, Bob, my friend who films me, when we finish filming, I'll put my thumb up, and then you'll know when to stop. And that got into interesting facts, and it got on. And now when I'm at Hampton Court, everyone's putting the thumbs up to me and shouting interesting facts.
There you go.
That's brilliant.
I do get asked a lot of questions. Like they'll say to me, "How do I cut? When do I cut my rose back?" Today was what do I do with my agapanthus now they finish flowering? So I will do a video on what to do with an agapanthus now it's finished flowering. And then a lot of people say, "God, that was good timing, Dave. When did you? What made you think of doing it now?" It's because I know what needs doing now because I've got my own garden. So I'm just telling people what I'm doing now, really, and what people are asking me.
Brilliant. And I guess it's one of the other sources of enjoyment for you, the fact that obviously you clearly love doing gardening and love plants, and you've got a massive knowledge. And ultimately, when you're sharing that with people who are interested in what you're talking about, it is a great feeling, isn't it? It's not a job. It's just a nice thing to pass the time.
Well, it isn't a job because I don't get paid for it.
Sponsorship. There you go. That's the way out.
I'm looking for sponsors now, then I can stop working and do this as a full-time thing. I'd still be doing the Chelsea flower shows and things like that. I want to do what I like doing, and what I like doing is sharing my knowledge about plants and standing at an RHS show with lots of people who are hungry for it. It's amazing how hungry people are for information, and it's amazing how the young people. I mean, I've got a lot of young followers, obviously through going on TikTok and things like that. People who've just bought their first house and they've got a garden and they've got not a clue, and they've no granddad or anybody who would normally, because they've moved away, they've got nobody who can tell them what to do about things, and I'm like I've been adopted as a granddad or a uncle who lives next door, who leans over the fence and tells you what to do with your garden, and that's what basically I do it very, very simply. I'm amazed sometimes at some of the questions I get, because you do forget that some people don't. If they don't know, they don't know, and you don't know what you don't know until somebody tells you about it.
Well, that's it. And there's never a stupid question, is there? Because at the end of the day, everyone starts somewhere, and just simple things like watering, and like at what point do you water, and the fact that loads of people are always overwatering plants because they think, well, it needs water, and the reality is actually plants can cope incredibly well, quite often sort of drying out for little periods and then being watered, and they do far better than if they're continuously growing in a bog. But most people unfortunately don't know that.
Yeah, and I mean, plants, plants, I always think about where it would grow in the wild. I mean, this is the way I think, that if that lived in the wild, it would get a period of dry, and which would make it go hunting for water. I don't usually, I usually, like going back to your roses, you tend not to try and water them of an evening when they're going to sit wet, especially when it gets in the autumn, when it gets cold. Try and water the roots, not the tops. With plants, I mean, again, roses don't like getting stressed, but most plants, you've got to find the right plant for the right area. Like an astilbe loves it wet, and it lives in a damp next to a river, next to a stream. It comes from that background. And then you've got anything with a silver leaf is obviously come from a desert or a dry area. So there's plants for everything. And I went on a really interesting garden at Chelsea where they basically dug a big hole and made a pond, and they piled the soil from the bottom of the hole high up. So they were growing drought plants at the top of the pile, right down to marginals and pondweed in the pond. So they could grow. They turned a normal garden where you could grow absolutely every different kind of plant you can get. But if you plant the wrong plant in the wrong place, it will fail.
Yeah, right.
Simple as that.
Yeah, it's an important, acronym to work to, isn't it? Definitely right plant, right place.
Correct.
Say, Dave, on the mechanics of creating your videos. Obviously, you are not the cameraman. Is it teamwork? How does the videos actually on your reels? How are they created on the day?
Well, most of them are done. A lot of them are done by my friend Bob, who we started off with. It was his cord line we cut down, and he was my friend at the time. And I just said, "Here, Bob, point that at me, and I'll talk to the phone, and I'll show people how to cut a cord line down." And that carried on, and he's got better at filming. He zooms into things, but we've got 1 minute 30 to get our story over, so I've got to talk fast, and but I don't want to talk too fast that people don't understand it. I also have subtitles on so that people can read them on the tube and things when they don't want to listen to my droning voice. But Bob, we're not professional and we're never trying to be professional. I'll say to Bob, zoom in on that. Just show them that.
Stage directions, yeah.
Yeah, well, we're not polished. We're not trying to be polished. It's like me talking to you over a fence, and if I was saying, look at this flower, zoom in on it, have a look, then that's what Bob does, and he just follows what I say. But we don't try. And if I fall over my words, or I make a muddle of things, sometimes I have to put a disclaimer on, or sometimes I have to put, oh, blimmin' heck, I said ground ivy instead of ground elder, you know.
Yes.
So, but I just put it in the writing underneath, and we just keep going. There's always people there to knock you down. Yeah. But 99% of my followers like what I'm doing, so I try and ignore the people who try and be clever. You know, they're just there to try and be clever sometimes, and sometimes it's negative, and I don't get much of that, so I shouldn't really laugh about it.
Yeah, you shouldn't do. Yeah.
It does. It's funny though. I can get 100 people saying they love what I've done, and then I get one person who'll say, "Hey, you should have done that," and I think it's the one that gripes me.
It should do. Positive
they
thoughts.
Should do their own podcast. Is the way I think about it. If they feel so strongly about it, go and do your own flipping social media.
Well, that's it. Or go and watch someone else's. There's lots out there, isn't there? At the end of the day, we try and do our best, but if you don't like it, well,
a lot of things I say to cover myself. I say, this is how I prune a grapevine. This is how I do it. I'm not saying it's the right way. It's just how I do it.
Yeah.
So nobody can argue with that.
No, definitely. And you're saying, Dave, about obviously in fact you've got a younger following. I was reading some stats in the newspaper the other day actually that our viewing habits have changed dramatically, and I think it's the 17 to 25-year-olds now hardly watch any main broadcast TV. So generally, they're getting all their information from the computer, from things like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. So the whole thing is actually sort of changing quite dramatically of the way they're viewing their information. So that's probably why you're getting so many new followers, maybe.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing as well. I mean, they watch stuff on the phones. They'll sit there and look at the phones all the time when they're travelling. But then things like YouTube now are on TV. So you can actually sit down and watch YouTube all night, and it will feed you. If you start going into, I mean, when I had COVID, I was watching YouTube for a week, and I started watching somebody about making baskets with willow, and I got loads, and I ended up watching loads and loads because YouTube, the algorithm sees what you're watching and then gives you another 6 more videos on basket weaving. but when I finished when I finished with my COVID, I came out and I still couldn't go out anywhere. So I went to my shed and I went in the front garden and collected a load of cordyline, dead brown leaves, the old brown leaves from underneath the cordyline, and I weaved a little basket that looks like Dorothy's basket off Wizard of Oz, and I made that
there you go.
Cordyline.
Yes.
Out of cordyline. It's from New Zealand, and they use it in New Zealand. The Maoris used to use cordyline for everything.
Wow.
So it's a brilliant plant.
Yeah, very strong leaves, aren't they? Incredibly strong. So, yeah.
Very strong, yeah.
Okay. So, Dave, it's coming towards the end of the podcast now. So we usually like to ask a couple of questions. So I'll start off with, you've been shipwrecked on a desert island. Which tool or plant would you want to have so you could enjoy your life on your virtual island retreat?
Right. Well, if you've seen the size of my tummy, it's got to be food, because the desert island will be probably covered in beautiful tropical flowers. So I'd want something to plant that I could eat constantly. And the one thing I could think of that would live constantly in fruit all the time would possibly be a tomato plant. I was going to cheat and say I'd grab an handful of veg seeds so I could grow potatoes as well and other veg, but I was thinking on a tropical island, tomatoes, grow it, and I could take seeds off the tomatoes and carry on planting more tomatoes. And then the fish I catch out the sea, I could have roasted tomatoes with my fish, and so that would be the plant. Unfortunately, it's not something scented. It's because I'm assuming there's lots of nice tropical plants on there.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Nice one.
And the tool.
Yeah, it's a nice food, isn't it? Tomatoes, they're really good for you. And
they go forever. I remember going to a research station. This is where my background comes into it. I went to a research station a long time ago about tomatoes, and they planted the tomatoes at one end of the greenhouse, and they grew them at 45 degrees. And they grew them, and these tomato plants must have been 50 foot long, and they had trusses of tomatoes all the way along. You can just keep growing a tomato vine forever if the temperatures stay nice.
Gosh. So
it would just carry on fruiting. And the tool, I was thinking about the tool, and I think I could make everything myself for tools except a pair of secateurs. So I think I'd have to I always have my secateurs in my ulster, and I'd need the secateurs for cutting through the jungle and for making my my hut.
Excellent. Well, every good gardener always has a good pair of secateurs, don't they?
And a knife,
They are the most invaluable tool. Yeah. And Dave, obviously you've worked in our industry for many, many years now. Can you share any amusing stories or funny jokes that you've picked up through your time?
There's so many. I think one of the funny ones that's happened just recently was at Chelsea Flower Show. I keep talking about Chelsea Flower Show, but it was at Chelsea Flower Show, but I wasn't there on the press day on the Monday. And a famous person came to the Hartnett stand and they were asking after me. And they were quite shocked that somebody who was famous was asking after Dave the Plantman. And he said, because I'm fed up. I wanted to have a word with him because I'm fed up of the night when I'm trying to go to sleep. My wife's going through his videos and all I can hear is, hello, interesting fact, hello. They're only 1 minute 30, you see. So you can, when you get time, you can sit and go through all my week's videos. So that's what she did.
Brilliant.
So that was a very famous person who, so you just don't know who's listening, who's watching.
No.
I got a phone call the other day from the Canal and Riverside River Trust, and said they'd seen me going down the canal with a big stick, whacking Himalayan balsam with Norman the Destroyer, which is this little terrier we take for a walk. And I pulled them out, and Norman rips them to pieces. And I said he's doing his bit for the environment because it's an invasive species. And I'm whacking this balsam. And the next thing, I was at the side of the canal, and the next thing, the Canal and River Trust have contacted me saying, can you come and meet one of our ecologists, come and see you, and can you do some more videos at the side of the canal? So you just don't know who's out there watching or listening. It's interesting.
It really is. And I expect you get the similar statistics to us in the sense of we have a world map and you see sort of people popping up who are listening and you think, how on earth did they find us when they're living in Bolivia or somewhere like that? It's like, I've never advertised there. We've got no associations with these places, and yet they find you. It's amazing, isn't it?
It's lovely. It's brilliant. One thing I've had to start doing now is I have to put July. If I do a video that dates, specific, like the say dead ending of an agapanthus, which I'm going to have to do this afternoon now. Except mine's not finished flowering yet. We're up north. We're a lot colder. but I have to put on the date and the country, because I used to get quite a few people saying, "Hang on a minute, you're giving advice on doing this, and I live in Australia." Well, it's just completely the opposite.
Of course.
Yeah,
So-
Southern Hemisphere.
I said, don't prune a plant really hard back after the 21st of June, because that's the longest day. And you've got to really, if you're going to do any hard pruning, do it before that day, so it gives the plant the rest of the summer to grow back and harden off before the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody in Australia comes back and says, well, that's middle of winter. You wouldn't do
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about Australia when I was talking.
Yeah, it's great.
But it's a global society now, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's really changed since we grew up.
It's brilliant. And a lot of people, there is a lot of bad things on social media, but I've also set up another thing called Dave the Plantman's Chatterbox.
Okay.
And it was Instagram, it was Facebook who came on and said, why don't you set your own sort of little page up where people can interact. So I set up a little community called Dave the Plantman's Chatterbox. And I think it's very, very quickly grown to about 6,000 people now. And I don't have to answer all the questions anymore, because everybody on there is answering each other's questions.
That's even better.
So somebody will put a picture on there and say, what's wrong with this? And before I've actually seen it and got onto it, they said, oh, that's a sawfly larvae. And then I go on and say, spray it with garlic spray if you want to get rid of it. Oh, it's too late now. Let it just do what it's doing. It's a pollinator. Just let it get on with it. I've left my sawfly larvae. I've been munching away on my road. So, live and let live is my attitude.
That's
I
brilliant.
try and recycle everything that's in the garden. If I cut it down, I shred it and try and put it back on my own garden, which has turned my heavy clay now into a woodland soil. I try and not use any chemicals. I try my best not to. I mean, that's what's good about the way gardening is going now, that people are getting a lot more environmentally friendly. And the other thing I did a lot of videos on at Tatton was one of the councils was saying about turning your driveway, don't turn it into a concrete desert, turn it into a gravel alpine bed with a few stones in to drive your car on. And so when your car's not there, it's soaking up the rain and not flooding and not going straight into the rivers and flooding the rivers. It's cut down flooding. And it also looks a lot nicer. And a lot of the alpines, you can run over them with your car, or they can sit in your car overnight, no problem. So I'm picking up good ideas like that, which I think are really good. And I'm trying to spread the word. I'm trying to make everybody's life nicer. That's what I'm trying to do.
Well, I think, Dave, you are doing it, and you're doing it in heaps and bucketfuls, and literally. Dave, it's been wonderful to chat to you today. How do our Dig It followers find you on the socials?
Well, I think if you put at Dave the Plantman UK in Google, you can't not find me. I'm on
Brilliant.
something. The only reason I said UK, if you put Dave the Plantman in, there is some obscure Dave the Plantman who lives in Jacksonville in America.
Okay.
That sometimes pops up, but he's all about veg. I'm Dave the Plantman, and if you just put UK at the end, you'll find Dave the Plantman on something. I'm on everything.
Excellent. We'll continue.
And that's we've only been going a year, just over a year. We started in April, and it's just over a year this has all happened to me.
That's fantastic. It was great to hear your backstory, and I'm sure our listeners will be obviously following you as well over the next few weeks. But it's been an absolute pleasure, Dave, to talk to you, and we'll hope to see you soon.
Thank you for having me on. And if any of my followers see me in the street, thumb up. An interesting fact. That's our secret code.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dave. It's been brilliant.
All right.
Thank you now.
Take care.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Today's show was brought to you by Buckingham Garden Centre and Nurseries. The show was hosted by Chris Day and Peter Brown. The show was produced by Peter Brown. And our thanks to Chiltern Music Therapy for providing the music. Thanks for listening.
At Chiltern Music Therapy, we want everyone to know the difference that music can make in their lives. From parents and their premature babies in hospital to grandparents with dementia. We provide music therapy and community music services to people of all ages and needs across England. We work both digitally and in person in people's homes, care homes, schools, hospitals and hospices. Find out more at chilternmusictherapy.co.uk.